Welcome to Valley Unitarian Universalist Congregation. So good to see all your faces this morning. Please rise as you're able and let's sing together, Answering the Call of Love.
Be seated.
Robert French Levins has written, "Holy and beautiful the custom which brings us together in the presence of the Most High, to face our ideals, to remember our loved ones in absence, to give thanks, to make confession, to offer forgiveness, to be enlightened and to be strengthened. Through this quiet hour breathes the worship of ages, the cathedral music of history. 3 unseen guests attend, faith, hope, and love. Let all our hearts prepare them place. Let us worship together this morning." I want to invite forward Lincoln Lee. Lincoln is going to help us light our chalice this morning, and Lincoln has a big birthday coming up this week. He'll be 6 years old this week. So as Lincoln lights our chalice, will you join me in reading in unison? We kindle this flame,
symbol of our faith, for the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of love, which calls us to work for justice.
Nice work, Lincoln, and happy birthday.
Good morning. My name is Dave Jude, your worship associate this morning. I am so glad that you have joined us here at Valley Unitarian Universalist Congregation. We are an active, loving family, and everyone is welcome. Whoever you are, however you define yourself, whoever you choose to love, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. It's one of our great joys to have visitors each Sunday. If you are visiting today for the first or maybe the second time or just checking us out, would you please find the courage to stand so that we can welcome you more fully? Thank you so much, and again, welcome. After the service, please join us for coffee and treats in the back, and join the Welcome Circle located off to your left, where you can find more about VUU and Unitarian Universalism. Should you need the services of our baby comfort room, it's located to your right, room 2, and there are speakers inside the room, so you won't miss any part of today's service. Also, for anyone needing a listening ear this morning, Randy Galbraith, there's Randy, is our pastoral care associate, and he'll be at the front of the sanctuary to your right after the service. This morning, Reverend Andy will conclude this month's sermon theme of generosity. A couple of weeks ago, Andy talked about being on the receiving end of generosity, and while my wife and I are generous with our time, talent, and resources, I can't help but be grateful for the support from our friends, family, co-workers, and even students since Teresa was first diagnosed with the autoimmune disease lupus back in 1997. At the time, there was far less awareness about lupus, and there were far fewer treatments for it because doctors lacked the advancements in research that have been made over the last 23 years. As a family, we plugged along. Teresa would flare, then go into remission, and the cycle would continue. Fast forward 10 years to when a routine stop at our local CVS wound up producing a flyer about an upcoming fundraising walk in Chicago's suburbs benefiting the Lupus Foundation of Illinois. The walk was less than 2 months away, so we very quickly put together a team which consisted of the two of us, our 2 young daughters, and my parents. You didn't know you were going to get visual aids today, did you? In that short time frame, we wound up raising over $3,300. Little did we know that was just a sneak peek at the generosity that was in store for our team. So, Lupus Blows, Teresa Knows was born that day. You know, Teresa had to be talked into that team name by me, but still to this day, if you say Lupus Blows, Teresa Knows at the Lupus Foundation of America's national office in D.C., they know exactly who you're talking about. Over the years, our teams grew larger in size and raised more money. The challenge became to recruit an even larger team and raise even more money the following year. And after taking a year off in 2015 to move to Phoenix, Lupus Blows, Teresa Knows was back at it the following year, debuting in the Arizona Walk to End Lupus. It's been an incredible experience being involved in the walk for so long. And along the way, I've had fun providing extra incentive for donors, like in 2011 when I got a lupus ribbon tattoo. It's right here. Or last year when I said I would shave my head if our team reached the $100,000 plateau. Not a bad total for a 12-year run. Well, we did. So I did this. Yep, there it is. So it's worth mentioning that that was part of a flash fundraiser last summer in which we raised $3,600 in less than 2 weeks. So I might do it again this summer. You'll have to stay tuned. I get a little emotional when I mention this last piece. A few years ago, we almost didn't participate in the AZ Lupus Walk. It was a rough spring for Teresa health-wise, and I had just finished a mentally draining school year. After a few weeks of contemplation and conversation, we decided to move forward. And that year, Lupus Blows, Teresa Knows broke our old team fundraising record that we had set back in Illinois. It was then that we decided that as long as Teresa is healthy and able, we will continue to field Lupus Blows, Teresa Knows, and fight for those who aren't healthy or able. It's a big cycle. The success of our team is based on the generosity of others, including total strangers who sign up and we meet for the first time the morning of the walk. That has actually happened the last 2 years. And by donating our time and energy, we know that we're helping the greater lupus community, which in turn will hopefully help find a cure for lupus before we lose another friend to this disease. It's also an amazing and somewhat overwhelming feeling to be on the receiving end of that generosity, especially on the morning of the walk, when a summer's worth of fundraising comes to an emotional end in just a couple of hours. I found this quote from Winston Churchill. He said, "You make all kinds of mistakes, but as long as you are generous and true and also fierce, you cannot hurt the world or even seriously distress her." I agree. Be kind, be generous, be thankful, be fierce. Again, welcome to VUU, and let's worship together.
And again, let us sing together, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. Please stand as you're able.
When your heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, when we see our faces in each other's eyes, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our hearts stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
Be seated.
Well, this morning we get to do one of my very favorite things, and that's welcome new members to the congregation. So I'm going to invite my colleagues up who are going to help welcome new folks. Don't leave me all alone, y'all. Join me up at the front here. All right. I was feeling lonely for a minute. Well, as we say when we welcome new members, membership in the Free Congregation is a great privilege and a great responsibility. It's a privilege to be a part of this faith family, to worship and work alongside other members of the free religious community. A privilege to seek in our congregation and in our communities truth and justice and fairness. To have our children work and worship and learn alongside us, a privilege, but also a responsibility. For the vitality of our liberal religious faith depends on our freely and cheerfully, to the best of our abilities, giving our time, our talents, and our finances to the work.
We do not begin this work today, of course. Thank you. There are in this sanctuary, in body and spirit, those who forged the path for Valley Unitarian Universalist Congregation, the family of faith we so cherish. Since the founding of VUU in 1965, many people have worked to help us grow from a handful of early members meeting in a pizza parlor to the beautiful campus and thriving congregation we have become. We are grateful for their sacrifice. We carry them with us as we continue their labors of love.
Membership in the free religious tradition is based on a covenant, essentially promises we make to one another. Our covenant, the one to which all new members in this congregation pledge to uphold, is as follows. Please recite the covenant with me.
It's coming. No, not quite. Do we have it back there, tech friends? Okay. All right, Mary, here we go. You and me. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. Is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in friendship, thus do we covenant. Our tech folks are amazing even when we throw them a curveball. Thank you.
I don't have the list of names with me. 1 second. Sorry.
That's okay. So a lot of us are doing this for the first time, and we're ironing out the kinks.
So we will now recognize our newest members, those who have signed the membership book as a symbol of agreeing to the covenant just days ago. So when I call you up, if you would please join us.
If you'll join us as Jody calls your name, and then line up to this
Bethany,
side, sort of curving around.
Yes, sir. Rick Billman.
They're coming
Kat
from all
Glover.
corners.
Emily Knight. I'm sorry, Emily. Amanda Lee and Heidi Lee. Laura Schlu. That's what I said. Becky and John Heno.
The ones that joined in the class before that was on Sue's list. Denise McLeod.
Denise McLeod. Art Maxwell. I'm sorry. There was others on the list that joined earlier, but I don't think they're here with us today. So.
All right. The new membership class of VUU, let's welcome them. So we welcome them with our applause. We also welcome them with a reading that we'll read together. So this reading is from our hymnal. It's entitled, We Bid You Welcome. Let's read that together now. We bid you welcome. Now I want to bid welcome to the children. So as we remain standing here for just another moment, if the children would like to come forward, if you have an offering, we'll be sure and send that off to the UU Service Committee to do justice around the world. And you can just stay standing, and I'll tell you why in just a second. So hang out with me up here just a sec. What a great group. Holy smoke. Look at you all. All right. You look so great. It's almost spring break, yeah? Yeah. So it is our tradition to sing our children to their classes through a Bridge of Love, and we're going to invite as well our new members, if they'd like, to go through the Bridge of Love and then return to their seats. Let's sing together. Go lift it up.
Please be seated.
Every now and then, we have a Sunday that's called Compassion in Action Sunday. Last congregational year, we did that every other month, but this year, with the fundraising we've been doing around the capital campaign, we've given that a little bit of a break. Typically in that program, a generous congregant offers a challenge grant for us to match their generosity. And I invite those folks to talk about something that's important to them that has to do with the work we do as a congregation. This morning, David Shea was generous enough to offer a challenge grant to the congregation. And so I want to invite David to come forward and talk about something important that has to do with not just us, but all the congregations in the Pacific Southwest District. David, thank you.
Good morning. So when you think about the UUA and giving, what comes to mind? What are the children giving to? Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. Who here has seen Sharp's War? Raise your hand. Oh, a few of us. Oh my God. Sharp's War, Ken Burns did a special on Unitarian Universalists. So please, if you like Ken Burns and you like UU, I would recommend Sharp's War. At any rate, the UUSC in some ways is the conscience of our movement, a non-governmental organization, NGO, that does good work around the world. I'm not going to talk about that this morning. I'm going to talk about philanthropy that transpires closer to home. The PSWD, or Pacific Southwest District, as Reverend Andy just said, manages several accounts that support congregations in the Southwest. There is a disaster relief fund. Some congregations in California used it after the fires last year. VUU received help from this fund after our flood in September of 2014. There are several smaller funds, including a Charles White Scholarship Fund. This provides $2,000 a year to a seminary student. This is a small but important contribution, considering the high cost of seminary and the limited resources of most seminarians. I mention this to raise awareness of an opportunity all of us have to provide assistance to other congregations and help VUU at the same time. How many of you are chalice lighters? Raise your hand. Good. How many of you have never heard of chalice lighters? Raise your hand. It's okay. Raise your hand if you've never heard of them. That's actually better than I expected. All right, I'd like to have a lot more hands go up for chalice lighters after today, sometime in the next 48 hours. Chalice Lighters is a program for all 50-some congregations in the PSWD in Southern California, Arizona, and Las Vegas. Every chalice lighter agrees to give $60 or more a year to fund 3 calls for 3 congregations over the course of that year. A member congregation proposes a project that will further growth for which matching funds are available. The PSWD board reviews those proposals and 3 times a year awards a chalice lighter grant for that call. This has been crowdfunding long before that term ever existed. More than crowdfunding, it is a way of encouraging and building relationships between and among UUs from around the Southwest. It rests on the principle that a little for many people can add up to quite a lot. It's been compared to a UU version of a barn raising. Where this benefits us is that if 20% of our membership become chalice lighters, our congregation becomes eligible for a grant. Can anyone think of how we could use the money? Any ideas? Yep, okay. Everybody knows. So please, join me and your fellow members of VUU, not only with your generous donations in a few moments here, but also by becoming a chalice lighter. The links for chalice lighter information and how to join were in the happenings this week, and they were in the February newsletter. Any questions, please see me after the service. Thank you. We will now take this morning's offering.
We'll enter now into a time of centering prayer and meditation led in part by our choir and by Rebecca. And in the center of that time, another former president of the congregation, actually, Beverly McCormick, will lead us in meditation.
We'll stay seated and sing Filled with Loving Kindness.
With loving kindness, may
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to my favorite day of the week. And may I say that the song that we just sang together is so appropriate because what we have here is a loving community, full of generosity, open-minded, and willing to know and to learn. There have been a few things that I've learned during this particular month, and I was really delighted when Reverend Andy said, "Beverly, would you like to speak?" I go like, "This is my favorite thing." That's so cool. And after all, it is Black History Month, so there you go. But then again, in thinking about it, I realize, and this has been the experience of my life here, Black history is alive and well and living at VUU. We have so many people who come with such open minds. So today, I'm going to invite you to open your mind to things that I've just learned. And imagine, I've been Black all my life, and I'm still learning stuff. And the way I've chosen to express this is through the exhibit that I've placed on the east wall. It's an opportunity to make people aware, because it's all about awareness. When we know each other, when we can predict what may happen, then we're free of fear, and we can join hands and make this the country that we want it to be. So I started with slavery because, you know, that's where we all started, being kidnapped and brought over in boats and whatever. And the interesting thing that I found when I was looking through all my material, and as you can see, I'm a magazine-aholic. I've got all this stuff stacked up in my house. And I have someone here who can attest to that fact that I have a collection. Slavery was the way that those people who had migrated to this new country, many times for economic reasons, had an opportunity to increase their economic wealth by creating slavery. But how do you do that when you're a Christian, God-fearing nation? Well, what you do is you demonize, you stereotype, you call people ugly names, and you create ugly images around them. And so with that thought in mind, we have a section called Stereotypes. And if you're interested in learning more about them, go online. There's something called the Jim Crow Museum, and it is replete with all of the ways of looking at my people in the most disparaging way, because it made it okay to have them work and slave all day long with no pay. So, okay, I got a chance to look at that. But then we got freed and we migrated, and my family migrated too. I'm originally from North Carolina. And we went because we were looking for jobs, and we were looking for a way to expand our lives because they'd been so narrow. And my mom, fortunately, was one of the people who was able to spearhead this whole thing. She broke through the ceiling of Western Electric, which came to be AT&T. But there weren't many of us who were able to succeed that way. The Social Security Act, this surprised me, eliminated domestic and farm workers. And guess where most of those people were? They were Black, and so no Social Security for those people. Imagine that happening. Then I turned the pages some more, and what I discovered was that Woodrow Wilson, creating this wonderful peace organization, segregated the federal government. Do you believe that? I mean, that's really kind of incredible. So all of us who used to have all these jobs that were required during Reconstruction, gone. Totally gone. There are other examples of things that happened to us that I learned. Black people are thought to be, without culture, without business acumen. And then I found this story about an Oklahoma situation that was called the Black Wall Street. And guess what happened to the Black Wall Street? They burned that town down to the ground and killed 1,000 black people in the process. To learn more about it, there's a TV show on now that uses that as the introduction. And then, once again, here I am, like, wow, where did that come from? I came upon this thing called the Wilmington Massacre. Too many people who were of color were part of the Fusionist Party, and they won the election, so they ran them out of town. Took it all over again, and nobody knew it until just recently. And this has been the story of our lives. We've had this ugly description of ourselves and no way to say we have just as much of an array of intelligence and expertise and willingness as everybody else does. So here I get to be with people on Sunday who are open to hearing this kind of thing, who may feel a little shy, may feel a little embarrassed if they're called out on something, but you have allowed me through your generosity to speak to you in this fashion, to give you this information, so that some of the things that are buried deep within you, because the hate, the fear is buried deeply in us. We don't remember the things that parents, school, whatever told us when we were very young about them, meaning me. But you've been open to hearing a different story. And so what I offer you today is an opportunity to peruse the exhibit, to go, oh, wow, I didn't know that, or to go, huh, wow. That's really something. Not too long ago, someone said to me, so if things were so tough, why are you still here? Why are your people still here? Why are you hanging in there? What's the deal with that? And I think Maya Angelou had the answer. It's still I rise. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dust, but still I rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I got oil wells pumping in my living room? Just like moons and like suns with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by a soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I laugh like I got gold mines digging in my backyard. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still I rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meetings of my thighs? Out of the hurts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that rooted in pain, I rise. I am black oceans, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daylight that's wonderfully clear, I rise. Bringing my gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slaves. I rise, and you, dear congregation, help me rise. Thank you for who you are.
As the choir comes up, I'd love to share a story of how the song we're about to sing was birthed. A mentor of mine, Sue Riley, wrote this song with two of her greatest friends. Sloan Wainwright, you may be familiar with the Wainwright family, a musical family, and Melinda Wood Allen. The three friends, all from different states, traveled up to upstate New York to attend a singer-songwriter conference. They were very excited about this conference and to come together. But the night that they slept, they woke up to being snowed in. It had snowed over the night and continued in that morning. There may have been a moment of disappointment of not being able to attend the conference, but moments later came this moment. One at the piano, one in the kitchen, and one tidying up the living room. This song was birthed, fully embracing the moment and the gift of the beautiful snow falling before them.
Thank you, choir. That was lovely. I want to let you know about something important that's happening here Thursday evening. There's a new ballot initiative called the Invest in Education Initiative. The goal of that initiative is to get $940 million back into Arizona public education. You might remember that 2 years ago, a similar initiative was put forward, and then through a series of political shenanigans, that's my editorial, was deemed unable to be on the ballot. So this year, that initiative has been vetted by the Arizona Legislative Council, which is something that didn't happen last time, and there have been a lot of changes. And the coalition that's putting it together knows now that we know it's ready to go. So Thursday night here, our partners at Valley Interfaith Project will be here at 7 o'clock to teach about the initiative. There are going to be some teachers here who are going to tell their stories about what lack of funding means to them in the classroom and how it affects them and their students. And then at the end of that training session, which will last about 90 minutes, I think, you'll be able to take home some signature sheets to begin gathering the 200,000 plus valid signatures that we need to get this initiative on the ballot. So if the last time, 2 years ago, VUU, among the 250 Valley Interfaith Project congregations, collected more than any other congregation as far as signatures go. So let's do it again, and let's start Thursday night. Public education is so important, not just in general, but to Unitarian Universalism. Some of the pioneers of public education were Unitarians who were doing their best to make sure that every child receives not just a free education, but a quality free public education. So join me Thursday night, 7 o'clock here, and I look forward to seeing you then. Well, forget what you may have read about this morning's sermon topic. The closer I got to this morning, the more I realized I wanted to say something different to you. We've talked this month about generosity toward other people and about that generosity that comes to us unpredictably and completely outside our control in the form of rain and the plants that the rain produces, which sustain our bodies, the love that holds us all our lives long. This generosity comes to us without our being in control of it. But this morning I want to ask you, as you're being generous with your neighbors, are you being generous with yourself? I'm not talking about attending expensive retreats or taking lots of baths, although if that's your thing, that's good. I'm definitely not talking about shutting out the world so you don't have to hear bad news. Every now and then maybe, but I'm asking whether you're extending yourself the same graces that you extend to other people. Are you being generous with yourself? For me, generosity with ourselves involves at least three things. It means accepting our limits, it means accepting our power, and then doing what we have to do to stay engaged for the long haul. Accepting your limits. This is a cone of silence story, just between us and the people who are listening online. And one Christmas when I was a kid, I got, my brothers and I received superhero underoos sets. It's complete with capes. Do you remember these, Gen Xers? Yeah. And people who bought them for Gen Xers. I got the Flash because I was super speedy. My middle brother got Batman, and my youngest brother got Superman. We caused so much chaos, fighting crime in our underpants. We would... They all watch the movies. They're all sort of in their underpants. We would jump off the back of the couch and pretend to fly down into the city to get the bad guys. On one of our crime-fighting excursions, Superman was really in his power. He zoomed through the kitchen and into the hallway at top speed, where he promptly bounced his head off the wall, sending him careening in the other direction, where he bounced his head off that wall and fell. We learned that night that even Superman sometimes needs stitches. He recovered, but he never really returned to his full glory. I sometimes think of my brief superhero career as a parable of adult life. I think RuPaul actually said it really well. We're born naked, everything else is drag. In other words, we're all performers to one degree or another, performing gender expectations and expectations around sexuality and relationship and social class. That's not meant to minimize the good work we all do, but friends, pretend though we might, we are not invincible. We all need good sleep, healthy meals, and the love of faithful companions. We put on our capes and go out to save the world, a legion of computer programmers and teachers and business people and clergy and nurses and factory workers and the like. And sometimes in the effort, we lose track of the fact that when it comes right down to it, we're all pretty vulnerable in important ways. I've worked with a lot of people, especially it seems like politicians and social justice organizers, whom I know would do a better job if they would just eat an apple and take a nap. The heart of hypercapitalism is what I see as this cruel drumbeat meant to wring all the life out of people before they're used up. It infiltrates everything. This mindset that we can't stop working, we can't stop producing. Even our nonprofits and our congregations are infiltrated with this. But you and I have limits, and we do have to acknowledge them sooner or later, either before or after life forces us to do so. So I think we do well to accept our limits. But of course, the flip side is true too. We have great power. And with great power comes, help me out, Spider-Man fans. I was reading comic books right before I wrote this story. I think that might have, or sermon rather. As surely as denying our limits will drive us to distraction, denying our power will make us ineffective and make our lives smaller than they should be. Our Unitarian forebears had something to say about that. The Unitarians were around, depending on how you interpret Unitarian, pretty much since the time of Jesus or shortly thereafter. At first, they proclaimed that there was one God and that Jesus, while Jesus was a child of God like the rest of us and a great prophet, wasn't a divine Savior. When Unitarianism reached the shores of the United States, it germinated in the early congregational churches founded by the Puritans. But then the Transcendentalist movement came along as, among other things, a commentary on the Unitarianism that was still happening in the churches. For me, the best example of that is Ralph Waldo Emerson. Emerson was a Unitarian minister for a while. He followed in the footsteps of his father, who led his Boston congregation from traditional congregational Christianity to Unitarianism. The younger Emerson received criticism for using Bible stories as illustrations in his sermon, but not actually basing his sermons on the text of the Bible itself. Emerson felt that the God alive in him could speak with or without the Bible. So shortly after Emerson resigned his congregation, never to serve another one, he spoke at the graduation at Harvard Divinity School to a room full of people who voted to have him come speak to them, by the way. A room full of people who had been trained to go into churches and preach in the traditional Unitarian way. Emerson denied the miracles recorded in the Bible and told those young, soon-to-be ministers that people didn't need them to be priests. People didn't need them to be go-betweens to the divine, and that they shouldn't go out and try to tell people what to believe. So these are some of his words in the 1838 address. He said, "Let me admonish you first of all to go alone, to refuse the good models, even those which are sacred in the imagination of men, and dare to love God without mediator or veil. Friends enough you shall find who will hold up for your emulation Wesleys and Oberlins, saints and prophets. Thank God for those good men, but I say, I also am a man. Imitation cannot go above its model. The imitator dooms himself to hopeless mediocrity. The inventor did the thing because it was natural to him, and so in him it has a charm. In the imitator, something else is natural. And he bereaves himself of his own beauty to come short of another person's. And this is, to me, the payoff paragraph of the whole thing. He said, yourself a newborn bard of the Holy Ghost. Have you ever been called that before? Cast behind you all conformity and acquaint people at first hand with deity. Look to it first and only that fashion, custom, authority, pleasure, and money are nothing to you, are not bandages over your eyes that you cannot see, but live with the privilege of the immeasurable mind. End quote. That was the central message, I think, of transcendentalism and eventually of Unitarian Universalism. God isn't out there somewhere waiting for us to say the right words to grant our wishes. The divine is inside every human being. However you want to define the divine, whatever you want to call it, the highest and best power of the universe is present in the beating heart of every person we meet and is present inside you. You can see that idea in the first principle of the Unitarian Universalist Association. All people have inherent worth and dignity, a worth that is not earned by anything we do. It's just a part of what it means to be a human being. Housing the divine, housing the holy, is part of the human condition. You are powerful, with or without whatever cape it is you wear when you leave home. Certainly that power manifests differently in each of us. Some of us like to be out front. Some of us are really good at working quietly. But when we put our powers together for good, it is stunning what can happen. There are forces in the world that want us to forget that. They would like us to be happy with just going to work, earning a paycheck, buying things with that paycheck, and repeating that cycle for 80 or 90 or 100 years. But our lives are about more than that. Here's the thing. There are a lot of ways for you to use your power, ways that fit you like a glove. There are also ways that don't. I've told you before, I think, that I started my career as a journalist. I lasted a little over 2 years. There were parts of journalism that I loved a lot, especially my humor column. And the sort of mental idea that I was preserving democracy, which I'm not, depending on the day maybe. But good Midwestern religious conservative that I used to be, I had internalized this message that I wasn't worth a whole lot. I was so shy. I know it's hard to believe now, but 20 plus years ago, I was so shy that it was hard for me to approach even the mayor of Columbus, Indiana for a quote. I wasn't really happy until I went into ministry and found the vocation that would allow me to make the difference I wanted to make. In some ways, our lives are journeys to find and maintain the right use of our power. Follow your bliss, they say, and I think that's pretty good. What are the things that really light you up, and how can you use your power there? But also, I'd say follow the things that really hack you off. What are the injustices that have you most incensed? How might you use the power you have to change those things? It might seem easier to just ignore that, but I think being being generous to ourselves is making sure we're using our unique power to change something for the better. Without that, the human spirit becomes anemic, and I think we suffer. The passage from the Jewish text, sometimes called the Wisdom of the Fathers, says it well. If I am only for myself, who am I? So being generous with ourselves means both acknowledging our limits and acknowledging our power. And so here we are, full of the power of all that is holy, born to make a difference in the world we all share, and often in desperate need of a snack and a nap. Sometimes we try to do something super and end up bouncing our head off the wall. This, too, is the human condition. What's a person to do? I think of another passage from that same Jewish text, the name of which, again, can be translated as Principles or Ethics of Our Fathers. It reads, "You're not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to desist from it." We must stay engaged, and we must acknowledge our limits. As is the case for so many parts of our lives, it isn't all one way or the other, it's both. The deepest and most important truths of the human condition I think are often like that. They seem paradoxical. Like the quote that's been attributed to St. Francis de Sales, every one of us needs half an hour of prayer every day. Except when we're busy, then we need an hour. The truth of that little saying sometimes knocks the wind out of me. I find myself getting so busy some weeks with meetings and administrative work, writing a sermon and making visits and the like, that by the end of the week I'm not just exhausted, I'm grouchy and really out of touch with why I'm doing what I'm doing. If I don't take some time to center myself, to do some devotional reading, meditation, prayer, at least every couple days, I'm more prone to that burned out kind of feeling. And I'm not able to make the kind of difference I want to make. Maybe it's not prayer or meditation for you. Maybe it's reading a science journal. But what is it that keeps you remembering what's important and what difference you're trying to make? I have friends who read poetry, who take their time exercising, who study ancient texts, all in that same effort to stay connected to the holy in themselves and in the people around them. We're in a presidential election year, a year that's sure to be a little more anxiety-ridden than most. Being generous with yourself will mean the ability to stay engaged without burning out. May you find all you need to acknowledge your limits, to acknowledge your power, and to do what you have to do to stay engaged. Amen.
Let us sing our closing hymn together. Please stand as we sing this. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let a dancing song be heard. Play the music, say the words, and fill the sky with sailing birds. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Learn to follow, learn to lead. Feel the rhythm, feel the need. To reap the harvest, plant the seed. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance.
Please join me in reciting the words that we use to extinguish our chalice. Though we extinguish the chalice, our connection to each other and this community remains. May its light guide us this week as we walk the path of justice, speak words of love, and fill our world with compassion until we meet again.
We have gremlins this morning, evidently. I want to remind you as you go that this is the last Sunday to bid on auction items, so if there's one more thing that you're really wanting to bid on, please make sure and do that before you take off today. Now may life bless you and keep you. May the Spirit make His face to shine on you and be gracious unto you. May the universe pour out the fullness of its blessings on you and bring you peace. Go in peace, dear friends. Amen.